So Chilean needle grass is a declared noxious weed in Victoria, and it's one of 32 weeds of national significance, which means it is a big problem right around Australia. Chilean needle grass is a real problem in our agricultural landscape. It's a highly invasive grass that can be spread by the movement of people and stock and machinery, and once established it's extremely difficult to eradicate. You can see in this big drift here on the roadside, it's got a very vibrant lime green colour in comparison to the straw colour of the cocksfoot. So Chilean needle grass is a perennial grass. It's tufted, which means it grows from a clump at the base. It'll grow to typically about 1 metre tall. It has a very lime green colour leaf, and the base of the leaves is actually quite sort of sharp or ridged when you roll your fingers between it, so a little bit spiky and uncomfortable, which is typical of the needlegrass family grasses. It has 3 ways that it can reproduce by seed. So seeds form in the panicle or the head of the plant, and this is where most of the majority of the seed is produced. But seeds can also form in the stem of the plant at each of the nodules, and you can see these nodules are like a ridge along the stem. Seeds can also form in the roots of the plant, and these are called basal seeds. So that is what makes this plant so invasive. It has the potential to produce seed in various places. So even if you mow or slash regularly, you won't be controlling the seeds in the base of the plant. The seed head of Chilean needlegrass has an arrangement with a series of spikelets, and it's these purple coloured glooms that are very distinctive when it first starts to flower. You'll notice that the awn, which is like the tail of the seed, early in the season will be a bright lime green, which matches the colour of the stem and the leaves of the plant. But later in the season, as it starts to dry out and as the seed ripens, they'll actually form this sort of straw coloured, pale creamy colour. You'll also notice as the seed ages that the awns will actually start to twist, and that is actually one of the mechanisms that drives how these seeds spread in the ground. They actually rotate and twist as they dry, so they'll drill into fleeces on sheep and they'll drill into soil, and that's what makes this such an invasive plant. We have some examples of seed heads of Chilean needlegrass taken here at different stages of maturity. You can see the sample at the top of the page with long straight awns, still with a touch of green, and progressively as we move down the page to the sample at the bottom, they've dried out and we have this more straw coloured twisty awn showing on the Chilean needlegrass head. 2 seeds here, so early sample, nice straight long awn, and then as it starts to dry it starts to twist and curl. This is a typical Chilean needlegrass seed. The actual seed itself is only about 10 millimetres long. It's generally smooth with a few tufted hairs at the tip, and then there is this small ridge or collar which is a key identification feature, and certainly the way that you can tell a native speargrass aside from Chilean needlegrass. Then you have the long awn that extends back from the seed. Sometimes Chilean needlegrass can be hard to identify when there are other native grasses nearby. There are 2 native grasses that typically look a bit similar, and that's native speargrass and the native weeping grass. Native speargrass grows to about 1 metre tall and flowers producing seed heads that look quite similar to Chilean needlegrass. The main thing to look for is to pull the seed head out and inspect it more closely. On a native stiper, the actual head of the seed is quite hairy. It doesn't have the collar around the base of the seed head, and the awn is much shorter. So the seed will help you to identify exactly what you have there. The other grass, Microlina or native weeping grass, is this big bright lime green patch that you can see here. So it certainly has the same colour as Chilean needlegrass, but you can see that it flowers at a much lower height, and the actual shape of the seed head is very different. It has this single weeping stem, and while there is a little bit of a red tinge on some of the seeds, when you actually pull the seed out of the seed head, it has a very short awn, 10 to 20 mil long at most. So a very different seed head, which should immediately disqualify any concerns that you have about that being Chilean needlegrass. So be careful to identify what you have, because we don't want to inadvertently control patches of native grass mistakenly. Chilean needlegrass is not limited to agricultural land. We do have it on a lot of our roadsides and nature strips in our rural towns around the Shire. You may, once you get your eye in, you may be able to see it. If it's mown regularly, you'll still see that sort of spiky lime green tufted grass sticking up above some of the other grass, and it's more evident later in spring when some of the annual grass starts to die off and dry up. So this is some areas of mown, and then you can see we've got some more mature plants up the back. If your roadside or your paddock is slashed or mown regularly, you might not even notice that you have Chilean needlegrass, because it just looks like an ordinary green perennial grass. It's not until late spring, if you ease off the mowing, that you might start to see the seed heads pop up, and that's when it's much easier to identify. One of the methods of control for Chilean needlegrass is to use a knockdown herbicide. This patch that we're in at the moment has been sprayed, and you can see that it has killed the plants. Now, if you use just a knockdown herbicide on its own, you will kill the parent plant, but you won't necessarily stop seed from germinating next year. So these mature plants have got seed in them, and they will then drop out when the plant dies and produce more plants. And you do also have the basal seeds in the base of the plant that will continue to spread the following year. That's why there are options to use a seed sterilizer with your knockdown herbicide when you spray, and what that does is sterilises any remaining seeds in the soil and on the plant, and stops them from germinating in the following season. If you know that you have Chilean needlegrass on your roadside, it's a really good idea to hold off on slashing until it's flowered. The roadside contractors can identify the grass much easier when the seed head is present. You'll know that they've been by when you see the blue dye that they use to show that they've sprayed the patch. This is how it looks.